All right, good morning, dear State Minister Blume, dear Steffi, Ferenc, Fabian, Peter. It's great to be here, dear friends and colleagues. And I really enjoy, I have to say, that today I don't have to speak about budgets and politics. I can speak about science. That is becoming quite unusual in my life. And I'm going to talk about a disease, and I'm really calling it disease intentionally because this is obesity, and still not everybody believes it's a disease. Something's going on, though, with that disease area, and it doesn't matter if you're looking at the Süddeutsche Zeitung or the Bild Zeitung or social media or peer-reviewed journals. There are all these topics: the end of obesity, the biggest drug ever. Something is changing massively and transformatively. And it's about time, because that disease area has been plaguing us for decades, really for centuries. And we're currently still looking at a situation where 20% of the population here in Germany are obese and 60% are overweight. Of course, not in this room. Now, if you are happening to be lean and are not on one of the current drugs that are out there, then I just want to mention that has nothing to do with you being morally superior with an awesome character and discipline. You're darn lucky because you had better genetics, just to anticipate that discussion, because 70% of obesity are clearly genetically caused in interaction with the environment. Now, obesity is something that really influences lives and quality of life. Your chance of reaching 70 should be, with normal BMI, 80%. Of course, depends on how old you currently are. But it really decreases when the BMI goes up. So that has an impact on your expectancy of life, on your life quality, or to put it really simply, like the WHO, you might just die because of obesity. 3 million people die every year because of obesity. Now, that was the situation also when I was a young doctor, not far from here at the University Medicine Hospital, and said, well, this can't be it. All I can do seeing these patients is either calling a surgeon, asking for a gastric bypass, which is sort of highly invasive and risky and can't be reversed, or what we can do is tell them what Hippocrates already told, which means eat less and meet less and move more. Which means eat less and move more. And that advice has never worked, as we know, through the centuries if you look at epidemiology. So I decided to devote my career to that question. Can we find drugs that actually work against obesity, that prevent diabetes and all the consequences, that are safe? And I was just as enthusiastic as I was naive, because we knew nothing about the molecular signals controlling appetite or body weight. There was just nothing there. Luckily, at the time, now my friend Jeff Friedman, famous scientist from Rockefeller and Howard Hughes, discovered that there's a molecule called leptin coming from fat cells, working in the brain, increasing satiety. Suddenly we knew there is actually a signal network that controls this. So I went to the United States studying leptin, found that there's another hormone called ghrelin, the hunger hormone, sort of the yin and yang of the regulation. Really, these two signals weren't the solution yet in terms of generating a drug, but they taught us something really important. They both work in the brain. And when you look at the entirety of human genetics we have done over the last 30 years, you could really say obesity is a brain disease. Now, based on that, we designed a new strategy together with my friend and 30 years collaborator, Richard DiMarchi, a peptide chemist. We want to target the brain. We need to do this indirectly because we don't have the tools to be specific enough to go into just some cells and not others, not cause side effects. We need to use Mother Nature's toolkit, endogenous hormones, combine those and have those go to the right places in the brain. And then we probably have to combine several hormones into one molecule to be powerful enough. Well, where to start? There was a growing number then of signals that we could look at, and the place where we really got the decisive advice was actually in the surgical room, in the operation room, from surgeons that told us, well, we see some hormones go up and down after these gastric bypass surgeries. So we started focusing on a group of hormones called the glucagon family, peptides. And something that the chemist sees is they have similarities where you sort of can think about turning one hormone into one that unlocks several pathways at the same time. We started thinking about glucagon first, and everybody said, "You guys are nuts, you're crazy. Glucagon drives up blood sugar. Why would you want that in obesity?" Well, we saw something else. We saw that actually the classical view is not everything. Glucagon can help you burn calories, increase satiety, help with lipolysis. So a lot of good things you want for obesity. But you need to overcome somehow the fact that it does something to blood sugar. And for that, we had another idea. So we started turning this hormone with like a half-life of a minute into longer-acting molecules that give you 20 minutes a day, a week of a half-life, and had this eureka moment in 2006 where we put a new version of glucagon in obese mice that we had 6 months on McDonald's diet and made them lean again. And we saw the same thing with GLP-1, something you may have heard about, another hormone that increases satiety, and said, well, two hormones, different action profile, different mechanisms, but we could see the synergy there. Somehow we got to put these two together. That's what we then did, years of work, engineering one hormone and unlocking two different pathways, and got that transformative impact here, 20-30% weight loss, which when I was a doctor was unheard of. It seemed impossible. Today we know, and this is actually a German pharmaceutical company, Boehringer Ingelheim, not far from here, that shows this works in humans. You can drive down body weight up to 18, 19, 20% with this glucagon GLP co-agonist, as we now call it, a polyagonist that is based on the drug class we discovered back then. Okay, but you need several shots at the goal. Things can fail and there might be toxicity. There's different subpopulations of patients that need different stuff. So we went into another combination from that family, the GIP-GLP co-agonists. Now, this was published in Science and is another 6 years of work where we showed that a GIP, GLP, two other hormones, single molecule that activates these two receptors gives you significantly more weight loss than a monoagonist. Ozempic is a monoagonist, for example, just GLP-1. And based on this drug class discovery, now you have a bunch of molecules. One of them is probably the front runner right now of approved drugs, Mounjaro, tirzepatide, which is famous for giving you 23% weight loss in humans, something that seemed absolutely impossible when I started. Now, it does a lot of different things that is not talked about that much. For example, 50% of diabetes patients on Mounjaro have normal blood sugar, just by that. Or when you look at folks with fatty liver disease, this is all the fat here, almost 30% fat in a human liver. You go on Mounjaro, a dual agonist, your liver looks like this. Suddenly you have 2% fat, which is much healthier, you may imagine. So at this point we said we can do this dual agonist and that dual agonist. How about a triple receptor single molecule co-agonist? GIP, GLP, glucagon, all engineered in one molecule that looks like an endogenous hormone, so your immune system isn't attacking it, but it really addresses these three key pathways. Now that becomes tricky. It's like a Rubik's Cube, right? But for one change of the cube, you need to go make a molecule, purify it, test it in cells, test it in mice, test it in rats, realize it's all wrong, go back and start over again. So it took us 5 years. In the end, we succeeded there, and these are the published results of this next drug class, the triple receptor agonist. This is Mounjaro here. This is the triple receptor agonist. So you almost double the effect. And you get better with clearing the liver of fat, cholesterol, glucose, all of that. That now also is through phase 3 clinical trials with pharmaceutical companies. Eli Lilly just published a press release. With the triple receptor agonist, you reduce 30% of weight in humans on average. We took it even further. I don't want to bore you with more gory scientific details. We just had a quintuple receptor agonist published in Nature 4 weeks ago. We go after world records, what can I say? A GLP-GIP PPAR quintuple agonist gives you 40% weight loss. If we push this further, people are going to just disappear. What's maybe more important is, this triple receptor agonist still, and the dual receptor agonist, and specifically the monoagonist GLP, some of you may have heard of this, they have some side effects. You can't give it to people that had pancreatitis or had thyroid cancer or something like that. And it causes constipation, and you have to dose up very carefully. Lots of people start throwing up and can't use it at all. So we gotta do better than that. All of this is linked to GLP though. Something that seemed a given, something that is the core of many of the drugs that are currently talked about in the press. So our semi-genius idea was, how about we get rid of that? How about we have a GLP-glucagon dual agonist that gives you hopefully also the benefits, that was really questioned by everybody other than us, but no side effects. Well, turns out you can do that. We made a dual agonist GIP-glucagon, no GLP. This works better than the triple agonist because you have unexpected synergy between these two hormones, and maybe more importantly, here are some human primate studies. We don't have the same side effects. You have superior tolerability, no nausea, no digestion problems, etc. So this might be the future. Just got published 4 weeks ago. This is something that may give all those patients that dearly need one of these drugs to prolong their lives, to increase life quality, but can't take them because of the side effects, gives them hope. Okay, let me end with a few glimpses into the future and the broader horizon. You may have seen in the media or heard from friends and colleagues talk about, well, these drugs do other stuff. They help with cardiovascular disease and cancer and, of course, diabetes and neurodegeneration. And that it's true. Probably these drugs prevent, to some degree, all of these complications and diseases. Therefore, they're a fantastic tool for prevention, probably also economically much better than repair medicine. But all of that has to do with having a more healthy metabolism, a healthy body weight, etc., etc. Now, there are a few things that these drugs do in addition directly in the brain where they work on the food addiction. They work on alcohol addiction. They work on nicotine addiction. They probably work on gambling addiction. So at some point we ask ourselves, how much fun is life going to be with these drugs? Turns out we're not driving anybody in depression. That has been tested. And it's also not true that these are the everything drugs that The Economist has been titling so aptly. Now, but there will be consequences, right? So if you don't have obesity anymore, you probably won't have type 2 diabetes anymore, or very, very little in a couple of years, once this becomes democratized and everybody has these drugs. Well, if you have no more type 2 diabetes, you will have, we will save much more lives. That is fantastic. Do we need all that insulin still? No. The insulin industry is going to change massively. Well, turns out the companies that make mostly insulin is Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly, so I guess they're going to be doing fine. Then you look at the food industry, the fast food industry, the luxury food industry, the pleasure food industry. They are shaking in their boots. They have crisis meetings because they see their revenue is massively going down. Well, but turns out they're very flexible. Nestle, for example, has just invented and is marketing Vital Pursuit, the weight loss accompanying drug, the weight loss user support food, whatever that means. Looks to me like a sandwich, more expensive. Well, the airline industries, they have figured out people are going to weigh less. We're going to save a lot of gas. It's going to be much less costly to fly. This is serious. I mean, this goes into their business calculations. All right, and finally, to go back to serious business, this has already made an impact, and it's making an impact. Something that we couldn't dream of happening in our lifetime has happened, that ever-increasing curve of obesity epidemiologically has been turned around. You look at the United States now, you show a decline of obesity. I just talked to a unnamed celebrity in the United States for some other reasons, and she said, I literally don't know anybody who's not on these drugs. Now, the question is if these people really should have been on it and are changing that curve, but there is an impact on society. It will be a healthier society, it will prolong lives, it will save lives.